Kimball Richardson. Is it okay that we record? Yes, that's okay. So I'm a Hoosier. I'm from Indianapolis, and this is my 34th year in healthcare. I have a master's degree in counseling and have worked at three major healthcare organizations in the Indianapolis area. Started out at the old Wishart Hospital, guys. Any of you remember that? And then I worked in emergency departments. I worked in several capacities at St. Vincent, and I've been at Community Health Network for the past 8 years. And really proud to be able to represent Community Health Network and our behavioral health service line. My area of interest, lots of training, if you want to call it expertise, but is crisis intervention. And I do a lot of crisis. I'm the manager of business development is my title. So I do those things in addition to managing some crisis response teams around the city. And I do some of that on a state level too. As you can imagine, the past year, we have had a lot of requests for talks on stress management, resilience, fitness, things like that. So I put together some information. Tiffany contacted me and said we would like to offer a talk on stress management and resilience to our members. And I was like, this is awesome. I love your organization. I'm a bit of a fashion buff myself. And so anything that has to do with cool clothing and offering yourself opportunities and adding to your resilience, I love that. So I'm gonna share my slides, guys. Hang on just a second. You don't want to see that. You want to see this. All right, I want to make sure that people can see. I'm going to change. Can someone tell me that you see one slide? It says mental fitness.
Yes, I see.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much. And please, this is, I don't think we're going to have a huge, big audience. Please feel free to ask questions organically. If we're on a slide or something comes up and you're like, I wonder what he meant when he said that, or can you talk about it a little bit more, or I have a question about or a comment, please just do that. You don't have to save it for the end, okay? So this just means all these letters here behind my name just means that I'm not a physician. When you're not a physician and you're in healthcare, you gotta get your cred. So I am licensed in Indiana as a mental health counselor, a clinical social worker, a marriage and family therapist, and a clinical addictions counselor. And currently, I'm the president of the state licensing board for those professions. I don't know what your life was like prior to March 2020, but I have a little bit of a guess as to what it has been like after that. I don't want to pretend that I know what it's like to be in your shoes, but I do know what it's like to be overwhelmed, to be affected strongly by what's happened in our world, not just COVID-19, okay? Not just COVID-19, but all of the racial strife and the struggles politically, either way that you believe on that end. There's been a lot that's happened to us, and it has affected us. Now, I'm here to tell you, and I hope you can follow along with me and may agree with me that stress is not inherently wrong or bad. Stress is actually a little helpful to getting us to work at our peak performance. You know, when we have, I'll tell you something that helps me personally is when I have a deadline and when I have to be accountable to people. That helps me stay on track and helps me do well. But we all know that when the pressure that we feel is too intense or goes on for too long, our ability to manage it and to cope with it decreases over time. And some of us have even felt the effects of not being able to function, frankly, as a result. Most of you understand what the word trauma means, so I know I'm kind of speaking the language there, but traumatization maybe, and some of these different kinds of trauma you may not have been familiar with. So just to get you to understand the terminology and verbiage, a primary trauma is trauma that we experience personally and directly. Secondary trauma is when we hear about other people's. We either witness it or hear about it, other people's trauma. And when we do that for long periods of time, that can be traumatizing to us too. And finally, what we consider vicarious trauma or vicarious traumatization is if you are a helper or in the helping profession and you're working with people clinically to help them get through their traumatic issues and stories, it can really affect us. So I'm curious to know if any of you out there are what I would consider essential workers, frontline workers, first responders, or work in healthcare. Anybody out there have a job like that?
I work for the Indianapolis Fire Department.
Oh, okay, well, you count. What do you do for them?
I'm a certified public educator, deputy fire marshal.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for that. And which fire department?
Indianapolis, IFD.
Okay, IFD. Okay. I have a long, long history of working with first responders all over the state. And do you know Captain Brandon Dryman?
Yes.
Okay, good buddy of mine. So tell Captain Dryman as Kimball said howdy.
I will when I see him.
He'll be like, who?
I
No, he's super, super nice guy. But absolutely. Would you agree that just hearing about other people's trauma can be tough?
Oh, definitely. And seeing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, and when I say guys, you know, I'm not being disrespectful. You know, I mean, you all ladies. We did this for weeks and months. We know what happens to people that have one traumatic incident in their life. It can be devastating, but we experienced it. And for most of us, the way we dealt with it was we dealt with it. We just went on, right? We had to survive. We had to get our jobs done. Some of us lost our jobs. We had to help our children deal with homeschooling, all that. So why do you think we're seeing a year and a half later? Why are we so busy in the mental health field? What is happening to people? What do you think is going on?
Lots of stress and lots of trauma.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's catching up.
Okay.
It's catching
Who
up.
said that? Who said it's catching up?
Yeah, I said it's catching up with us.
Right, right. Are you the lady who said that you work for IFD?
No,
I'm Kimberly Brutzman. I'm on the phone call.
Okay, thank you for joining us. I think you're 100% correct. And what I think this is what you mean. Let me know if I'm not right, but I think what you mean is sometimes when there's trauma or a traumatic event or series of events, we kind of put our emotions on the back burner to get through that time. And that's not a bad thing, guys. That's not wrong and it's not bad. But what happens is if we don't deal with our emotions and we decide, some of us are like, I'm sick and tired of all this stuff. I just want to move on. I want to forget about everything and just move on. That's when we can get stuck because our emotions have always been there, even if we put them on the back burner, but they are knocking at our door and they're saying, you're going to deal with me, whether you like it or not. And sometimes whether we're able to cope with it or not, they come back. So hopefully some of this information will be helpful to you knowing how to move forward. Understanding how to cope with traumatic situations is often handled through what we call emotional intelligence. Now, I know a lot of you out there are very, very bright in certain areas. It could be academics, it could be in your area of expertise. Not everybody is aware of what is emotional intelligence. So let me tell you what it is and what it's not. Someone who is aware of their own feelings and emotions is one key sign. But being argumentative, not listening very well to others, or playing well with others, if you will, having frequent emotional outbursts, and not accepting responsibility for your own actions are signs of low emotional intelligence. Some of us were lucky and grew up, all of us are adults now, but when we weren't adults, when we were children, some of us were lucky and grew up in households where we were taught how to communicate effectively. And when I say communicate, I mean, I'm including our emotions in there. Some of us grew up in households that communicating emotions were discouraged. It wasn't okay to talk about feelings. Sometimes it was even, we grew up in abusive households and we had to figure out these things on our own. So that's all very, very difficult and can have an effect, of course, as adults. So here are signs of what we call emotional intelligence. When I say self-aware, I mean being aware of what you're thinking, what your emotions are, what your motivations might be for saying or doing some of the things you do, making the decisions that you make. Self-regulation just means, can you regulate your emotions appropriately? That doesn't mean turning them off and on. It just means when you feel frustrated or angry, can you feel it and allow yourself to have those emotions, but not hurt yourself or hurt other people at the same time? And here's a big one, having the capacity for empathy, feeling what other people might be going through or experiencing. So important. Why do we want people to have these skills? To keep people healthy and essentially keep people in service or keep people working. Now, why did I cross out happy and put healthy? I literally made this change just like a day ago, because it used to say keep people happy. But I thought that was a lot of pressure to put on ourselves. And really, it's too limiting. I think health is a tripod approach, which means let's be healthy, mind, body, and spirit. And also to help people stay working in whatever capacity that you're able to. This is not going to be a surprise to anybody, but there are effects of what I call a critical incident, trauma, or adverse events. And they can lead to all of these things, and of course more. And it can affect our workforce and our ability to have a productive life, socially as well. How do we know when people are traumatized? That's a rhetorical question, but I'm going to ask you to tell me something out loud, if some of you will, with this next slide.
Withdrawing from being included in the group, just withdrawing.
That's a really, really good one, Lynette. If that's your name, Lynette, I see Lynette on there. That's excellent. That's really something that we want to pay attention to, isn't it? Especially if you normally are not that way. So we really want to pay attention to changes. And I'll tell you, what do you think, Lynette? Do other people notice changes in ourselves, or do we notice changes in ourselves first? Who typically sees it first?
Feel like outside people would typically see.
That's exactly right. Sometimes other people notice those changes in us before we notice. So hopefully you have people who care about you enough to let you know, I'm worried about you, and here's what I notice. Or that you can do that for other people too. But take a look at this picture that I know it's a little pixelated. And tell me, which woman do you think, and I see Marie, you have your hand up, I'll call on you here 1 second. Which woman do you think is injured? And let's do this as a twofer. We'll get Marie going and see if you can answer this question. And also, let's see if I can answer a question for you. Marie, what do you think? She might be overwhelmed. Well, let's get somebody else. Which woman in this photograph is injured? Miss Lynette.
Well, I'm gonna hope that it's not blaring obvious, so it feels like a trick question. I see, the woman with the cast.
Right.
Her stare is kind of like blank. I feel like both of the women are injured in some way.
Yeah.
She just seems like she's kind of resigned with her body posture and just doesn't want to be bothered. She has a stay away from me posture. I would not approach her.
That's interesting. And sometimes that's on purpose, because we don't want people to notice, or we don't want people to talk to us, right? Yeah. Sometimes we don't know that we're giving off that vibe. Like we really, maybe inside are like, would someone help me when someone approached me? But yeah, you're giving off the look, if you will, like, don't even come near me. Can you tell which woman might be depressed or which woman might be frightened? And this can be answered by anybody.
I think the dark-haired woman's depressed.
Okay. Why do you think that?
I agree with Claire.
She's just like, she's got things on her mind and she's not with it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Keith,
You know,
what do you think?
I
So
totally agree.
I personally really just try not to judge a book, by its cover, because I feel like the people that, tend to smile the most and be happiest are the ones that's really impressed. Like the comedian, I forget his name, my favorite comedian, Mrs. Doubtfire. he committed suicide because he was dealing with a lot. So we on the outside try to make everybody else happy and laugh because we have more control over uplifting them than we can uplift ourselves.
Yeah, sometimes that absolutely is true.
I definitely agree with that. That's why I'm also looking at the ladies that are actually in the back as well, not just the two ladies in the front.
Okay.
Because
Interesting.
I'm looking at them and I don't know why, because the lady with the short hair, I'm looking at her because she seems like she may be one, because I find myself being this way, being an encourager, being the one that uplifts and supports, everyone else. But then inside, it's like you're breaking down as well. So I'm kind of paying attention to what's not as obvious.
Okay. All right. Well, that's very interesting. You guys have all made really interesting points. And now let me ask you one more question about this picture. Do you feel more compassion for one of these people than another?
I think the girl in the dark-haired girl in the front looks sad, so I feel compassion for her and the injured.
Okay.
And then the guy in the back or the second row looks like he's like under stress, maybe,
Yeah.
or just thinking about something too much.
Isn't this picture fascinating? I found it fascinating. I just literally found it on Google Images. Right when I was looking for something else, I'm like, oh, that picture is awesome. I'm going to use that in this presentation because it really gets at a lot of things. It gets at maybe some of our prejudices about mental injuries, which I think are just as legitimate as physical injuries. It gets at the fact that sometimes we can't see when people are hurting emotionally. And sometimes we have, sometimes we feel a little bit more compassion for people who have an injury that we can see. At least that's how some people operate. And then the other thing is, what would you want to say to someone if you don't know what's going on, but you suspect they may be struggling? How do you approach that person?
I just show them a little love.
Okay, like what?
Just, hey, how are you doing? Sincerely. Being acknowledged sometimes makes people feel better because they might feel invisible, like they don't matter. So, you never know what somebody's going through at home. So just being kind to them.
Right. Anybody else? That's a really good way to do it.
When I see someone who looks like they are depressed or under a lot of stress, certain look that they have, I'll just, encourage them that everything is going to be okay and let them know that I'll be praying for them. We all have situations, and I mean, it's difficult when I'm in a situation, so I know how it is, if other people are going through as well. So I just try and encourage other people as much as I can.
Well, very good. Thank you. Thank you for that. You might be the only encouraging person they talk to that day. You just never know.
If they are, I want them to remember my words and hope they really help sincerely.
And you know what? Unfortunately, sometimes we don't even know how much that is helpful to somebody. We don't see the reward sometimes right away. Sometimes
yeah, but that's something I never concern myself with that. I just know that if it's happened to me, how it made me feel, because when you're going through, you can feel invisible and you can feel like, you're in your own world, in your own head, and, nobody understands what you're going through. And when somebody takes the time to notice that you are going through something and try to encourage you, I know that makes me feel good. So I just try to do the same, and I don't, worry about if that person, how they took it. If I can, I just want to let them know that, we're kind of all in this together, and I hope that everything, and I pray that everything will get better. And, I just kind of leave it at that. And I say a prayer.
It's a nice gift to give. So in addition to what Lynette said about withdrawing from others, here are some other kinds of warning signs to pay attention to, mostly in yourself. But of course, if you see your colleagues, your friends, your sisters going through any of these things, these are what we call objective things that you can generally tell and see. And you can share that. I'm worried about you. I care about you. And I noticed whatever one of these is happening. So sometimes we look at things on a continuum in terms of, where do you fit into here? And are you thriving, surviving, struggling, or in crisis? The reason I point this out is because sometimes it's hard for us to understand, but some people don't know where they are on this scale. They're so used to focusing only on other people and not themselves that they don't know how to evaluate their own level of distress. So it's important just to know where do I fit along here? It's not a judgment, it's just where you are right now, and then to put some things into place to deal with it. Now, I'm not here to give you an anatomy lesson per se, but I do want you to understand that stress is physical. Stress does happen and show up in our bodies. It comes out in behavioral ways and in emotional ways, but it does affect our bodies and our nervous system. And the reason I selected this slide is that everything that is described on your right-hand side are things that the body does naturally to help us get ready for a disaster or trauma or traumatic event. We are designed as human beings to get ready. Now, sometimes what that means is we are designed to run or get the H out of Dodge. We're designed to freeze, or we're designed to fight back. And either one of those, any of those scenarios there's good things about them and there's definitely consequences associated with them. But what's happened to us for the past year and a half is that we're supposed to have an event. We get ready for it, whatever that means, fight, flight, or freeze. And then the other part of our nervous system, so that's called the sympathetic nervous system. The other part of that equation is that we're supposed to then have a period of relaxing and recovering, like what's on the left-hand side. And what has happened to many of us is that we've not been able to relax or recover. We've been like that, ready, in this state of fight, flight, or freeze for so many months that we have fried ourselves, okay? That's the non-clinical term. And we've put our emotions on the back burner and we are like, what the heck is happening to me now? Why am I falling apart after a year and a half of getting through this stuff? And that's partially why that we didn't have a chance to relax and recover as we should have and normally do. Stress does, again, affect us physically and affects all parts of us. I've seen hundreds and thousands of patients over the years who have come to me and told me, I can't, I have chronic pain, I have hives, I have constant diarrhea, I'm achy, have headaches, all these things might have a physical reason behind it, which is why we always want people to have good checkups. But in addition, they can all be because of stress. Now, why is it, you guys, do you think that not everybody wants to believe that this can be caused by stress?
Maybe because some people feel like that's a sign of weakness. You can't control or regulate your own emotions.
That's right. That's right. There's a fancy word that we put to that. Anybody know? It's called stigma. When we stigmatize somebody who's having a stress reaction and we think, oh, they can't even handle themselves. What's wrong with them? They're weak, they're weird, they're wrong. And when it doesn't have anything to do with that, it's natural to struggle at times. And then remember, when the struggles are too intense and for a long period of time, that's when it's really, really tough to handle it all by ourselves. So if you feel like you want to share with your colleagues, where do you feel stress in your body? Where does that show up in you?
Ooh, in my shoulders and my neck.
Pretty aware of that.
Angie, I feel I get sharp pains or headaches sometimes when I'm feeling stressed. Just sharp
I
pains.
think maybe somebody was talking, we can't really hear you.
I think Angie said she gets sharp headaches, sharp pains and headaches is what it sounded like she said.
Okay. Those are very
It depends. If it's worry, it's in my stomach.
Oh, interesting. Really interesting. So different emotions will have a different physical target, if you will. Would you agree with that?
Yes, definitely a different reaction.
Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, and the good thing about that is that you're aware of it. Frankly, that's about 50% of getting better. Because not everybody, and I'm talking really, really smart, bright, accomplished people, are not always emotionally aware and can be literally clueless. Like I've had this happen several times in my career. Somebody will come in, we'll be doing an assessment. We start talking about what's bothering them. They start getting really, really upset to the point of literally rolling around on the floor, rolled up into a ball crying. And I'll say, do you think you might be depressed? They don't know. I don't know what's wrong with me. And I'm like, I think you might be depressed, Now, this is a sign of someone who really is unaware, which means we have a lot of work to do. But when you are aware, you're closer to helping yourself. So let's talk about a few things that people can do when you feel stress, especially physical stress. Many of these concepts are things that you've heard before. It's the challenge of putting them into place and really focusing on them. So let me ask you some questions about good sleep hygiene. What is the ideal temperature of a room when you go to sleep? What is okay, give me a range of temperatures.
For me, it can't be too hot or too cold. So I'm saying 70, 71.
Okay. Anybody else? That's actually really, really good, Lynette. In general, now, everybody has their personal preference. It's not that it's wrong, okay? But in general, between 68 and 72 degrees is considered good sleep hygiene. A little cooler is better than a warm room. Is it better to sleep on your back, your side, or your stomach?
Your back.
Okay. Why'd you say that?
Well, I just think of babies, how they always put babies on their back. So that's why I said back.
Okay. Now there has been a little bit of academic discourse and controversy over this issue in the past couple of years, and some people are saying it's your side, but most people would agree it's your back. I have never heard anyone say it's best to sleep on your stomach. Never. Now, some people do, okay. But, okay, how long should you lay in bed if you can't get to sleep? How long should you lay in bed if you can't get to sleep?
30 minutes.
Okay. Anything different than 30 minutes? All right. You win the prize. A good virtual sticker to you, man. That's exactly right. About 30 minutes. Okay. Now, what should you do if you can't get to sleep within 30 minutes?
Take some melatonin.
Okay. So melatonin is
Get up and go run a marathon, and then take a hot shower, and then drink some tea and go back to sleep.
Oh, dang, girl. I think you've done that.
I literally say real talk, I'll go read a book.
Okay.
Normally my Bible, and then I'll feel sleepy and go to sleep.
So let's go back to the melatonin. Melatonin is a natural hormone that we have in our body that helps us to feel sleepy. And it also is related to skin color and skin tone. But it does help us to feel sleepy. So sometimes taking over-the-counter melatonin can be helpful to some folks. Always tell your doctor if you're taking that, okay? But that's absolutely one option. Reading a book is a good option. What about exercising?
I feel like exercising gets you revved up, pumped up. So I would prefer to keep that in the morning to wake up. Some stretches, but
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think, everything I've read from sleep specialists says that they would prefer that you not exercise right before bed. Yeah. Okay, now let's talk about something also very important to us as human beings. That's breathing correctly. And when we talk about breathing exercises, back in the day, if let's say, now I'm talking to a bunch of smart ladies, you guys know that this is important. Most guys, you know how we are. We don't listen to this stuff very well. But if you make it sound cool, like tactical breathing, oh, that sounds like military. Okay, I'll do it. So you make it sound cool, and guys will usually try it. But in all sincerity, these breathing techniques, which is part of mindfulness techniques, some parts of this are yoga training, but breathing exercise is so important for helping us to regulate our emotions, to relaxing. And there are ways to breathe that are better and designed to help us feel relaxed. There are ways to breathe that help us get more excited. There are ways to breathe that help us have panic and can create fear. And sometimes people don't know the difference. So this is one of the techniques. This is just one of many breathing techniques. This is called tactical breathing. Sometimes it's called 4-square breathing. And a typical way to do it is in 4-second segments. So you breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds. You hold your breath for 4. You breathe out through your mouth, kind of push it out like that. Hold for 4 and start the cycle again. And the idea is to do this breathing consciously and intentionally. And you do it just like any other skill. It's practice. So you practice a few times a day. I'm just talking about 3 or 4 rounds of it. Just a minute or two, a few seconds really can help, because what you're teaching yourself to do is to use these techniques automatically when you just start to feel anxious, versus, you know, you're kind of in a panic and you're like, how am I supposed to breathe? What am I supposed to do? I have to calm down, you know, and you're trying to get a little bit more awareness out in front of that. So this is one, go ahead.
One thing that I don't know, it was sometime, I guess, giving birth to one of my children. So we don't breathe in deep enough and use our whole diaphragm. So literally filling up that whole cavity and doing that, because most of us, normal breathing is very kind of shallow and we're not using our whole diaphragm.
That's an excellent point. A really, really good point. I mean, there's stuff all over the internet that you can Google breathing exercises. You know, go to legitimate sources, of course. But yeah, excellent comment. That's exactly right. Go ahead. Some of you may not have heard of these concepts before, but I just want to put them out there to let you know that some of the things that we have been experiencing in the past year and a half do have a name attached to it. Even when people are like, I don't know what the heck's going on with me. I feel weird. I feel overwhelmed. And it could be for one or more of these things. We don't have time to, let me see how we're doing, to get into them. But I just wanted you to know that there are some names to some of the things we've been experiencing.
Well, I had broken ribs, and it caused pneumonia because I wasn't breathing in very deep. So it can also have a physical effect as well if you don't breathe, if you don't have the proper breathing, and that could be caused or could be the reason why you have physical symptoms of stress.
Well,
So
that's, yeah, I'm so sorry that happened to you, but you're exactly right. Absolutely. Now I'm going to go through some of these quick to make sure we get out on time, but I wanted you to see this. I wanted you to see this visual image, and maybe on your own time, look up this myth. This is a mythical creature, of course, and that this myth of the phoenix was really talked about in literature really about 2,500 years ago. So it's not anything brand new, but it does help us to understand that when we rise up from our difficulties and our issues, it's important to remember and to understand where we came from so that we can be better and become who we can be. And it's not, I don't want to think about this again. I just want to move forward. I don't want to focus on the past. We don't have to dwell on it. But when we don't ever look at our past, it can come back and it can knock on our door and sometimes haunt us. So it's just a really a nice story to say, let's look at our past and we can still continue to move forward. Just a definition of resilience. Also, I'd just like for you to consider a new term. You may not have heard this, called transformative normal, that we can not only recover from trauma and traumatic experiences and get back to a level of normality for ourselves, but you can even be transformed into something even better. I hope you will agree with me that mental health and wellness does matter, and it does make a difference in our work lives and in our home lives. Okay, moving through to some of these things. Breathing, sleeping is important. Every once in a while, we do need a little professional help with a professional counselor or doctor, but there's other ways to do stress management too. And all of these things are legitimate. Some of these are even what we call evidence-based, which means we've done studies on it, and it showed, the research shows that doing these things helps people be resilient. I'm going to move through these a little bit quickly, but here are some skills of resilient people. So I want you to keep in mind, what of these skill sets do I have? Are you an optimistic person? Now, this doesn't mean that you're Pollyanna and you think everything's fine and there's nothing wrong. Okay, this means you're realistic, but you do have a sense of hope that things can get better. A moral compass or faith. You don't have to belong to a certain religion, but studies show that having a sense of spirituality does help people to bounce back and withstand critical incidents. This is a fancy term, cognitive flexibility, but it means, do you have, are you creative in the way that you think about things? Are you just black or white, right or wrong, this or that? Or can you sometimes see the gray area and be okay with that? And that's helpful. And then finally, let's see. I'm going to pose this to the audience. What do you think the number one thing is that helps people to be resilient?
Good attitude.
Okay, I love that answer. Unfortunately, it's not correct. But it's a good answer. That does help, of course, in all sincerity.
That kind of goes with number one anyway, sense of optimism. So
I'll put it in that category too. Yeah, I agree. Okay, anybody surprised? Social support. That means you have at least one other person that you can talk to, that you can trust to give you honest feedback, that you can share your thoughts and feelings with them, and that they're going to keep that confidential. That's so, so important. The United States military actually was doing some research on optimism, of all things, and found that the main concern of optimistic thinkers isn't whether they kind of see the glass as half empty or half full. But interestingly, it's instead, where can I focus my energy so that I can have more control to make the situation better? Where do I have more control? That's what it's better to focus on. Do you think that things happen to you because they're outside of yourself? Or, this is a better way, okay, you see that red and green? I put that on there for a purpose. Green is good, reds, let's stay away from that. Or do you have an internal sense that you have control over yourself and your thoughts and emotions? Even though we're not perfect, but you can say, I can accept my faults and shortcomings. And I can also say, I'll accept that I had a role in some of the good things happening. So there are advantages to being optimistic, guys. And this is research from the armed forces and from psychology. So I'm going to flip through very, very quickly. We're not going to get to these guys, but sometimes this talk can be like an hour and a half and not just an hour. But I wanted just to go through a couple of more things. It's so important to have social support networks, so important. And that is the number one thing that helps people to be resilient, especially ages 65 and older, but really at any age, but especially the older we get, so important.
I'll be in my quilting club.
Okay.
My AARP groups.
Oh, there you go. They get you at 55 though, don't they?
No, you don't. I'm already a member. You get full benefits past 50, but I am currently a member.
Not looking 50, but okay.
Thank you, darling.
All right. I totally love this slide. I didn't come up with I did create it and put it into this form graphically, but I didn't come up with the concept. But I love the concept because I think words are important. And what we tell ourselves really can have a lasting effect over time. This is just like that book we read as children, you know, The Little Train That Could. I think I can. And sometimes we aren't aware of the negative messages we give ourselves, like I can't, or I'm stupid, or something wrong with me, I'm weird, I'm weak. You know, those are so devastating and sometimes happen outside of our awareness that we're doing it. So giving ourselves these new and different messages, more realistic, positive messages can be so helpful to keeping us resilient. Every once in a while, we need a little extra support from professional or paraprofessionals, and that's okay. Those things are available here in Indiana. Confidential crisis line. And then just let me leave you with this. How are we doing? 1 minute over. I'm sorry, guys. Let me leave you with something. I didn't come up with this concept either, but I love it. It's called self-care bingo. Okay. So look at this bingo card. I'll show it here in just a second. And ask yourself, did I do this in the last 24 hours? Did I do this in the last 24 hours? Keep a little tick or keep track of how many you get, and then we'll see how you guys did. Okay, ready? Did I do any one of these things in the past day? Everybody gets a point for staying alive. Okay. So, all right. Now, I'm gonna, how many people got at least 10? Raise your hand. Okay. Did anybody get at least 15? Okay. 16. Miss Lynette's going for the virtual trophy. 17. Oh, dang girl. 18. Did you get 18, Lynette? She was so overwhelmed, she got stuck, I think. Oh, I can't hear you, Lynette. You're on mute.
I think I'm freezing.
Did you get 17?
Yes.
How many did you get? What's your highest score?
So I did not challenge negative thoughts.
Okay.
And I did not do a hobby. I did everything else.
Okay, very good. Really, really good. Anybody get That sounds like 23, right? So did anybody get higher than Lynette? All right, well, even if you did 2, you're at least moving in the right direction. But this is just something, it's kind of fun. I did this exercise about a month ago and the audience was all police officers.
Mhm.
Almost all guys. I think there was one lady in the audience, all guys, and they loved it. They had a good time with it. I mean, my wife and I, our children are adults now, but when they were babies, if I brushed my teeth that day, I was having a good day. Okay. So look on here. These are all legitimate coping skills and strategies for resilience. And if there are some things that you didn't do, think about how you might put that into practice in the next 24 hours to keep yourself healthy.
Well, everybody did practice mindfulness. So we just did the breather exercise, and then they got a point for the center one. So everybody's got at least 2.
Okay, there you
And
go.
I know some folks brushed their teeth or took a shower. So this is fun. You should send that to, our facilitator to send to us. Or I can find it online. Let's finish the slides.
Okay. All right, so just in summing up, I wanted to let you know that what I'm telling you are not just things I made up. I seriously did my homework. I read all of these articles, and they're all about, maintaining resilience. So thank you so much for investing in yourself and putting yourself first every once in a while. That's so important. This is my contact information. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like to share with me after this evening, I'm very happy to correspond with you. So thank you so much, Tiffany. Really appreciate you and everything that you guys are doing at Dress for Success. Always nice to look good and feel good.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
Great presentation.
Good job.
You all have a good evening.
Yeah, something fun to look forward to. My daughter, speaking of my children, my daughter is going to give you a presentation on clothing and makeup. She's a little fashionista. So I think she's talking when? Next month or in October, Tiffany?
Yep, next month, September 15th. It's how to thrift your closet plus makeup.
She knows. She knows the deal, guys. So for a young lady, she knows how to shop.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kimball. I will get this email to you guys tomorrow with his contact information and anything else that I can try to find the self-care bingo. But thank you guys so much. Kimball, have a good night.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.